Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 24, and the time is 5 p.m. I would like to call to order the ISD Board of Education's Policy Review Committee meeting. Welcome to our audiences. We are going to start with policies that have changes. Policy 418, drug-free workplace, drug-free schools, presented by Dr. Chris Belmont, Assistant Superintendent.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Mersal, Director Alt, Director Connor. Some minor changes to 418, drug-free workplace and drug-free school, based on recent legislation. I direct your attention to Section 4, exceptions. Minnesota School Board Association's recommending adding some language to make sure that anyone that's registered in the Minnesota Patient Registry Program, I believe that's a branch of the Department of Health, is exempt from the constraints of this policy. Other than that, just some minor references. So that language was from the most recent legislative session, 2024, to include those who are enrolled in the registry program.
Thank you, Dr. Belmont. Any comments or questions? Okay, this one I'm not sure whether we should do first reading. Okay, that's what I wrote down. Okay, Sarah, this one is going to be on first reading.
Okay, thank you.
And then we will move on to policy 515, protection and privacy of pupil records. Once again with Dr. Chris Belmont, Assistant Superintendent.
So policy 515 has also been before the board multiple times in the last couple of years, once after the 2023 session, and then some clarifying outcomes from the most recent 2024. A lot of the changes here are in the definitions section, 3 letter D around directory information. So the policy intends to further clarify that the changes in legislation and the Minnesota level around directory information supersede the federal law. So some of it's just some language adjustments. Some of it is really just clarifying what I paraphrased for you all. Any other additional changes were in disclosure of educational records. Section B, number 23 was added. In that section, I want to make sure I get the heading correct again. Prior consent for disclosure is not required in the case of when requested, educational agencies or institutions may share personal student contact information and directory information for students served in special education with post-secondary transition planning and services under the following statutes. That language added by the MSBA in response to 2024 legislation. Well, other than that, just some reference changes throughout and at the end.
Thank you, Dr. Belmont. Any questions or comments from fellow members?
I think I just have a question. Birthplace and birth date are considered directory information. Is that what I am reading?
Federal or?
Under the federal.
Under federal, but not
double check.
but not Minnesota.
Correct. Yep. And that's the
Federal,
That's
yeah.
kind of the juxtaposition that
Yeah.
the legislature, I believe, has been wrestling with again in the spring of 20.
Yeah, I can understand
Certainly,
that.
school districts are trying to manage.
And then page 515-28, D. Are we able to replace he, she with they? Do a replace all?
E, collection of records, student
A
records.
D as in dog?
D, form of request.
515-28, let me see if I can get there.
Parents or eligible students, what are you asking if we could
There was a
substitute?
he, she in there that
Oh.
I'm wondering could be
Oh,
changed to
yes.
they.
they,
Yeah.
yes, got it.
And the same on page 30, 515, maybe just do a replace all. And 515-31 and 515-32. It's either his, her, she, he. And that was all.
Okay.
Yep. Nope, not in that one.
All right. Put 515 as a first reading.
Okay.
All right. And then we'll move on to 102, equal educational opportunity, and we'll have Dr. Chris Belmont present this one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Director Mersal. Policy 102, equal educational opportunity. We are proposing the revisions to Policy 102 as recommended through the Minnesota School Boards Association. The revisions includes rewording of Section 2A. This shift in language is in response to those recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Belmont. Any comments or questions?
Just had a small comment. What if it just stated discriminate on the basis of, instead of saying one or more of the following, any of the following? Is that like overstating it? In the first paragraph under general policy, general statement of policy A?
Yeah, I think it's mirroring just what the statute has. I'm not sure
Okay.
why they chose
Okay,
that particular language.
okay. All right, that's it.
Okay, 102, I have it on first reading. All right, 419, tobacco-free environment, possession and use of tobacco, tobacco-related devices, and electronic delivery devices. And we'll have Dr. Belmont present this one as well.
So this is also responses to recent legislative changes or clarifications. Possession and use of tobacco, tobacco-related devices, and electronic delivery devices. The School Board Association recommended changes to Policy 419, including the addition of item 4C, which adds updated language from statute around permitting smudging.
Thank you, Dr. Belmont. Any questions or comments?
Just one. 419.3, Roman numeral 4, exceptions. In C, we use Native American. And there's also American Indian that's used. And I'm wondering if we can choose
One or the other.
one or the
Check on
other.
that. They are.
Whichever one is most appropriate.
Okay. They're interchangeable, I've learned from my learning.
Really?
You see that at your retreat. But
Is there a preference?
We'll check on that,
I mean, if there's a
It's
preference among
interesting.
families, you know,
right.
and,
We'll
and,
check on that.
and just to save the question, it's the same in 609 and, I think it's just 609. There's a similar switch. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but.
No, that's okay, that's good.
All right.
So seeing if we just want to be consistent with the
Yeah.
terminology.
I have that one to go on first reading then, when we have an answer to the question. All right, and then 609, religion, presented by Dr. Chris Belmont, Assistant Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. So 609, some of the revisions as recommended by the MSBA include changes in the title, religion and religious and cultural observances, as well as section 3.4, which adds language about American Indian cultural practice observances, and also includes includes updates to the legal references. And we will look into looking at the terminology and seeing if we want to get consistent as that's all I got for you.
Sounds good. Any questions or comments? All right, well, okay, since we have a pending question for that one, just like 419, I'll put it as a first reading.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Next is 410, family and medical leave. This one is presented by Stacy Sovine, Executive Director of Administrative Services.
Good evening, Committee Chair Marsal, members of the board. Bringing to you 410, removing of qualifying language that doesn't apply within this recommendation from MSBA. We did have a question on the definition of spouse and inclusive on that. We checked with the MSBA on that. They looked at all legal references. They didn't see anything that would put that there. Their final recommendation, if you do make changes, they would strongly encourage you to check with legal counsel first.
Got it. Thank you.
I think we've gone through this before.
We have, I thought we did, and it was kind of a refresher of my,
Yeah.
I was like, there's a reason why.
Yeah. So, again, it's under the definition of spouse, which kind of hits in two different areas, one with the military component for FMLA, and then address or attending to another. It doesn't take away from the individual rights, though, of individuals.
Gotcha.
So FMLA does apply equally across,
Everybody.
yes.
Awesome.
That qualifies.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yep.
Any questions or comments?
Just to replace all for his, her, he, she. There was one, page 410, 1, C and E. Well, it couldn't have been 410, 1, because it's the next one. But it was in
You do a
C.
find and replace.
Yeah, it's in there.
416. Find it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was it.
All right, sounds good. 410, I have that one to go on consent. 416, drug and alcohol testing, once again presented by Stacy Sovine, Executive Director of Administrative Services.
MSBA is recommending the addition of oral fluid testing and the procedures as such for different testing, whether for or cannabis, for alcohol, drugs, as far as part of the testing process. That's pretty much related, the majority of it is to that.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments on this one?
Just some edits. 416.5
5.
C,
Okay.
policy and educational materials, number 2, there's a double semicolon.
Oh, it sure is.
And then 416.7 H, testing requirements. 1, pre-employment testing. A, a driver applicant shall undergo testing for alcohol and controlled substances. Is there a reason for brackets around alcohol, or is that just something that needs to be taken out?
You can look at the model policy. I don't know.
I'll double check it against.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And then a general question, 416.8. Number 2, post-accident testing B. Drivers should be tested for alcohol use within 2 hours and no later than 8 hours after the accident. Is this statute language?
A lot of this is
A lot of it
guided,
is?
Yep.
It seems so broad.
Yeah. Which page was this on again?
416.8.
Yep, number
Right
2.
here, right at the bottom.
That's 18. Or 16.
8. Oh, yeah.
2 hours seems like a really long time.
Well, that is a fixed rate as far as
It
how
is.
quickly alcohol can be left from the building.
Hereby.
But
Yeah.
I'm wanting to make sure, a lot of the language that is in here is for bus drivers,
Yep.
which we don't employ directly. Now,
True.
the company that we contract with is obligated under the same requirements to do the same type of testing.
Yep.
The drivers that we do have would be for like our BEST program. And with that, if we did have an accident, as soon as it was medically feasible, if the person wasn't injured, we
Yep.
would have them tested as well.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that we do expedite that on pretty much all claims when we have concerns.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Okay. 416.
All right.
Good.
That one would be first reading.
Okay, sorry, I was just waiting for you to, I do have it first reading.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear.
No, I thought you were scrolling through your
No,
notes to
no,
like
I'm
ask
done,
more
I'm
questions.
done,
Sounds
sorry.
good. Okay, we can move on. So 416 is on first reading. 509, enrollment of non-resident students, once again with Stacy Sovine.
This section is including for the open enrollment policy, if a parent of a child with a disability hasn't enrolled yet within the district, and whether either coming into our district or open enrolling in another district, they may do so if they're able to demonstrate that the student is already receiving services at Head Start or child care. So it's just another path for more families to open enroll. I'll just put it that way.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments? No? All right. 509 will be on first reading. All right, policy 707, transportation of public school students, again with Stacy Sovine.
We're getting into the fast ones here. This one here, they're just including and calling out the whole Minnesota statute that pertains to this section. Pretty much about it as far as clarification.
That's good. Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments? All right, I have 707 as consent.
Okay.
708, transportation of non-public school students with Stacy Sovine.
Okay. All the difference that a word makes is pretty much this policy. Really moving from shall to must throughout the section as far as what the responsibilities are for districts and non-public schools. Really just, that's the only component that is changing through here. And it is just legalese. It's not, shall is more passive by nature, where must is directive.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yep.
Any questions or comments?
I just remember when the shells were added, so it's interesting to see them taken out.
Well, I was glad to see a little more stronger language in here. All right, 708 is going to be on consent.
Okay.
All right, 802, disposition of obsolete equipment and material with Stacy Sovine.
Yep. This is adding to the legal references, Minnesota Statute 471.85, and that is pretty much the only change that is occurring with this policy.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments? All right, 802 will be on consent. Okay, and then we have a couple policies with no changes. Policy 406, addendum with Stacy Sovine.
Okay. 406 is the records retention schedule for the district. Really what this is we're adopting the Minnesota Historical Society retention schedule. We have to adopt it. You have very little latitude, if any, to modify this. However, the last time that the Historic Society modified this was in 2000. They are due for an update. In 2000, Facebook wasn't around. Many of the different internet services had yet to take off, so it's due for an update, and I do believe that is in the works. So, but at this point, it's the same thing as been for the last 24 years.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments?
I just have one in the addendum. The address is River Ridge Court. I think we need to update that.
Yeah. Yep.
Know where that is?
I don't know, I didn't put the page.
Do a word
Oh,
search.
Yeah, yeah.
1185 or something, 11/85. All right, I have 406 to go on consent. All right, 414 is mandated reporting of child neglect or physical or sexual abuse with Stacy Sovine.
Again, no changes, just an annual review with this policy. It is a policy in which we either train or direct staff towards on an annual basis that they are mandated reporters if they have reason to believe that a child is physically or sexually or emotionally abused.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments? No? All right. 414 will be on consent. All right, moving on to 498, political campaign and activities with Stacy Sovine.
While the world is changing with political activities, this policy is not. So again, no changes, but it is a timely review for us.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments?
Just to find and replace all is her 498.3, Roman numeral 4 procedures.
Right, thank you. Okay, 498 will go on consent.
What was the find and replace? I just.
3. 4 procedures, number 3, there's a his, her in the first line. See that, school of district employee or official? And then just do a find and replace. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Okay, 722, public data requests with Stacy Sovine.
This policy reflects the Minnesota Statute, Chapter 13, on public data request. Again, no changes to the statute or to the policy at this time.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions or comments? Good. All right, 722 will be on consent. And that is it. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, thank you.